What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I'm your hostess, doing the mostest. I literally just recorded like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And the mic was not on. But you know what? It's been a minute since I've been recording on my Canon. As y'all already know, I'm like in transition, so it's been like a phone thing. I haven't had my theme song. It's been crazy. So I'm like talking and then randomly was just like, I don't think this microphone's on. But y'all know me. This is not my first flub. Thank God I was not done with this entire recap and review and thoughts and everything like that before I realized this. So getting into season 2, episode 4 of Brilliant Minds, titled Lady Liberty. The director is Sutherland. The writers are Ryan McGarry and William Yu. And the cinematographer is Claudine Sauve, with a special guest star of Jane Krakowski, who plays the patient, Ariana Burnett. Okay, so this episode, we are opening it up in the boardroom. Okay, so because the writers of Brilliant Minds hate us, Josh is now the interim chief medical officer at Bronx General. Y'all already know how I feel about that, because it means that like my Jolliver cannot be working on getting the relationship back together right now, because it'll be an entire huge HR situation. Anyways, so we're having this meeting and we got all of the heads of the departments in this meeting, and we're talking about allocation of resources and allocations of funds. All of the hospitals everywhere, they are super busy. The population is taking resources, but of course, government funding, private funding, all of these other things is just not enough. And this is something that I'm actually really glad that they touched on in this episode, even if it was in a space that was kind of comedic, because in the real world, this is happening everywhere. There used to be so many different major hospitals, major medical centers, but as certain things change within the population and the hospitals that serve those, they have to be able to meet the demands and reallocate resources and funds for that. So, for example, when you look at labor and delivery units, there are a lot of places that have completely cut funding to their L&D services and have reallocated their funds to somewhere else as they shift mothers to neighboring hospitals, because that particular location, the women aren't having children. And so having this conversation with the board, they're all like, okay, we need to figure out which departments are using the most money, so that way we can see, is it like fraud, waste, and abuse? Are we doing too much? And where can we take these funds and redirect them somewhere else? In this meeting, I see, and we all see as viewers, Anthony Thorne, the ER doc, has been kind of taking some jabs at Dr. Wolf, but you really see the hater in him come out in this, because he's just like, okay, the neuro department, because you've been careless and you've been callous and all you do is run amok and you just think you can do whatever you want and blah, blah, blah. And Oliver's like, listen, I got to do what I need for my patients. Like, if that means that we're going outside the bounds a little bit and we're being a little bit unconventional, it is what it is. You knew that when I was hired. Like, it is what are we doing? And he's even like, Carol even knew, and she was like, leave me out of this shit. And so Josh is just like, well, yeah, you do use a lot of money. And he's like, okay. Because at this point, Josh is kind of using this position as a shield to not have a real conversation with Oliver. And so Oliver's like, okay, so since you want to sit over here and be on their side and try to gang up on me, what's my satisfaction rates? And he's like, 97%. Say that again. Say it louder for everybody in the back here. He's like, 97%. Exactly. So what I do is actually yielding results, not only on these exams, not only on the fact that I'm not having any return patients whatsoever, but they're also satisfied with the care that they have in the long-term care that we leave them with, so that they can have a satisfied life. So this is something that nobody can really argue with, but in the spirit of playing nice, Oliver's like, all right, man, cool. I know I'm better than y'all, but I'm gonna do what you ask, just so we can see. Because at the end of the day, what a petty person will do is conform to your demands to prove you wrong. Like it just is what it is. It's in our nature, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. We're gonna do it. So they leave, and after Josh basically being like, stop making these house calls, stop doing all these other things, stop using our resources, he's like, hey, but I do need you and Carol to go to a house call because our biggest donor for the hospital is having some issues and she fell down the stairs. And of course, Wolf is like, didn't you just say? And so Josh is like, can you just stop like being contrarian? And it's like, well, who's being contrarian, sir? Do you want me to tend to the patients in the way that I do best, or do you want me to stay in this hospital and act like a robot and send them on their way and treat them as if they're not human beings? So Josh is like, bruh, go to the goddamn house, like, please. So he gets Carol, he goes to the house, and we find out that Ariana, whose name is on the outside of the building, who donates a lot of money to Bronx General, is in early stages of dementia, and she fell down the stairs that morning. But we also find out that she's in a conservatorship ran basically by her husband and her daughter. So Wolf and Carol are just kind of like, let's just go in here, see what's up, and write our little notes, chart everything, and it is what it is. But as she's sitting there and they're trying to have a conversation with her, she keeps talking about these birds, and she's like, don't my birds look pretty? And Oliver looks down, and she has all these origami birds on the ground, and it says help. So when the husband comes in the room, she hurries up and kicks it, and now they're like, okay, we need to figure out a way to get her in this hospital and outside of this house, because up until this point, the dad has only ever wanted house calls. He didn't want her going into the hospitals ever since her dementia diagnosis. So him and Carol come up with a plan to get her out so that they can isolate her and figure out, okay, is this a neurological thing? Is it a psychological thing? Because y'all are telling us that she's not in there, but she knew enough to fake being senile and falling down the stairs to get us in here to cry out for help. And so over the course of the episode, in regards to her as a patient, you really dive deep into conservatorship and themes of like when people change and maybe the people closest to you aren't able to understand or process the change, and when they don't understand something or they don't understand your behavior, they look at it as a mental illness, or maybe even accidentally gaslighting you into believing that something is actually wrong with you when in fact you're just different. And so what we find in this episode is she don't have dementia, and the medications was actually ended up making her more confused and not being on the medications. She simply was someone who thrived in high risk, high octane environments, and on the heels of her retirement and not dealing with numbers and not dealing with risk and not dealing with stock markets and plummeting and all this other stuff, her brain was literally rotting and not being used. And it's very similar to, like, I don't know if you've ever felt as if how do I put this? Let's say you grew up and you were drawing like all the time, and then your parents was like, you need to get a real job, you need to make you some money, that drawing shit is not gonna do nothing in the long run. So then you go and you become like a lawyer or like a manager or something like that, and you're doing this for years and years and years and years and years, and you're feeling something on the inside and you're just like, fuck, like, but my passion, like, you feel dead on the inside. And now as you're continuing to like live your life, people are like, you're making a lot of money, but they're like, man, where's that spark? Where's that passion? Where's that energy? Where's that drive? It died. That part of your brain, you're not drawing anymore. You're not accessing the creative parts of you. You're not accessing the emotions that allowed you to put what you felt into a painting, into a sketch, or anything like that. And so people are looking at you as if you've changed, and now they're trying to say like, you're depressed. oh, they don't do this anymore, they don't do that anymore, they must be depressed, let's get them on medication. And all it is you have abandoned your true self. And we learned in this episode, she's having some neurological deficits and some things that exhibit and mimic having dementia, because the thing that puts her in her most passionate state of mind has been cut off. And when she was experiencing a little bit of the retirement blues, a little bit of depression of not being able to do that day in and day out, of course, she's not using her brain anymore. She's no longer doing mathematical equations and calculations and all of those things. So she's kind of losing that, because it's an exercise. Your brain is still a muscle. You have to use it to keep it strong. And when that started happening, instead of her husband having a conversation and being like, well, what do you feel? How's everything going? They looked at it as if she was having dementia. And so the times in which they caught her doing high thrill seeking things that maybe she's never done before, they're like, oh, she's losing her mind. But she knew she couldn't go back to her job because she retired. But what she was incapable of understanding herself is that what she was seeking was what she had. But because she couldn't go back to what she had, she's gambling hundreds, tens of thousands of dollars away. She's jumping off of a mountain. She's doing all these other things, and it's scaring them. And all it would have taken was communication, but instead it was turned into her losing her mind. Them going into a conservatorship was crazy to me, especially given what conservatorships can look like. And I like the direction of this episode when it came to her being a patient, because you really did feel like it was a Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes situation. It's like, does the dad and daughter want to put her in an early grave? Do they want all of her money? Like, what is really going on? But that same thing within Dr. Wolf that people want to temper and that people want to change is the very reason that he was able to figure out neurologically what was going on with her. And I like that they attached her to the brain scan and her daughter to show them physically, to give them something tangible so that they can see how their wife/mother actually feels. And so that's another thing too. Like, we feel a lot of things, but if it doesn't make sense to the person that's receiving your feelings, they won't be able to process it because they can't touch it. And it's something that they don't understand. Because they can't see it, touch it, smell it, they're going to look at you as if you are crazy. And that's why people always be like, am I crazy for feeling this way? You're never crazy for your feelings. But people can make you feel that way because as you're explaining something, if they don't have a baseline or an experience in their life for what that is, they're going to try to rationalize it in something that fits into a box. And once they categorize it, if it falls into the category of you just losing your mind, now they're going to start making those steps to do that. And unfortunately, in this situation with the husband, it made steps to the point that even a doctor was like, yeah, she got dementia, give her these meds. And the meds was making her worse. And so as they hooked her up, they show like all of these different like crazy thrill ride seeking things. And while the daughter's brain, like fear function, was reacting, the adrenaline function of Ariana was reacting. And so the dad and the daughter was able to see these things excite her. And they ended up coming up with a treatment plan that integrates the family into her new life post-retirement rather than expelling them from it, and getting them to have those conversations so that they can understand that your wife, your mother, she's allowed to evolve. She's not going to be the person that you knew. We change every 5 years. Get her outside of this box that y'all put her in so that she doesn't think that y'all are trying to kill her or poison her or dim her light. Not my bartender in the back coughing in the middle. We're gonna take that as a drink break. I haven't drank on this podcast in a long time. So we got some sangria. I got some sangria on ice. I forget the name, but nobody paying for me this. What the fuck am I saying? Nobody's paying me for this anyway, but it's good, y'all. It's good. So shout out to the bartender in the back. But yeah, I really love it as an episode. Is it my favorite like case? No. But Jane Krakowski is so good at what she does. She is a phenomenal actress. I love seeing her in everything. And she's one of those actors that even if you don't remember what she was in, you know she's good because you're going to remember her regardless of remembering the title of any project that she has. So I love that so much. But going back to like the other relationships of the episode, so this season is definitely relationship driven. So on the heels of, Oliver has to walk and work between the lines, Charlie decides to take this as a moment to be like, y'all need to go through me. You need to stop going through Dr. Wolf, blah, blah, blah. And Ericka and Dana are just kind of like, whatever, because they're on the outs anyway with one another because Dana told on Carol last season. And so in this, their relationship is fractured and it's pushing them to pursue validation and visibility in relationships that they would have otherwise not pursued if they weren't kind of like beefing with each other right now. And this is with Dana and Charlie. Like, for some reason, Dana tells Charlie why her and Ericka aren't on the same side. And you kind of really don't know what Charlie is playing at because he's being very rude and kind of mean to Dana. But then he comes back and he's like, I do think that you're a good doctor, but there's a time and a place to play. Now, is that true? Yes, she do be playing too fucking much sometimes. And I did like that she stood up to herself and was like, hey, this is just who I am. Like, this is me. Just because I played on me, I don't take it seriously. But he's like, I get that and I recognize that and I understand that. So he used this moment to disarm her. I still feel like he's playing something very sinister. And I feel like that was done on purpose. But I do think that this episode is trying to get us to see that maybe Charlie is misunderstood and that he's a red herring to some things. He could just be a terrible, socially awkward person who's maybe somewhat of an incel and doesn't know how to communicate effectively with other people and especially women. But my spidey senses are also telling me that you just cannot trust him. And it doesn't matter that he's awkward in interacting in other settings. He's just a terrible person because he's not even the best with patients. He's smart, but there's something else going on with him. And on Ericka's side, with something else going on, this girl refuses to get help for her PTSD after seeing somebody drop in an elevator in front of her face, to the point where she just picked a motherfucker up in the park and was like, yeah, I can get you these exams. I can go ahead and help you out. You don't have to be scared of doctors. Like, it is what it is. I got you. And she's so focused on just this savior complex in a way to just kind of like, I don't know, get through probably some nightmares that she's having that we don't know of yet. We get a glimpse of that memory. But it seems like we're leaning into Ericka and what's really going on internally. But she's ended up doing some shit that is not sanctioned. She didn't run it through nobody. And I get not running it through Charlie because she don't like him, but she didn't run it through nobody. And it ended up being a Dr. Strong type of situation in the MRI room. And Dr. Thorne had to come down there. He had to talk to cops from even engaging in the situation because it is a Black man who is having a schizophrenic episode and he's trying to calm the Black man down while trying to get Ericka out of a dangerous situation while also trying to keep these white cops from coming in there gung-ho and causing serious bodily injury to this patient. So in that regard, Anthony Thorne, I love him as a doctor. Is he showing himself to be a supreme hater for Wolf? Absolutely. But the level of control, especially as an ER doctor, you really got to see his prowess in this moment. Again, I worked in the ER, and you really got to be like, you kind of have to be the jack of all trades in a lot of situations, but especially volatile in dangerous situations. You got to know takedown procedures. You got to kind of have some negotiating skills and stuff, because you never know who comes through that door. A domestic violence victim comes through the door and the person who was beating on them is coming in after. Gang members come through the door shot and somebody's coming after them to finish the job. And so in that moment, you really get to see Dr. Thorne, and you really get to see where maybe a little bit of the animosity comes in towards Wolf, because neurologists, neurosurgeons, and even cardiologists, that, you know, people look at them at, like, they have a God complex. I made my dad sit down and watch this, and I think I said this last episode for Brilliant Minds, but I made my dad sit down and watch it, and he was like, oh, of course he's a neurosurgeon. Neurosurgeons think that they're God. Like, they're like in the medical field. That is what's happening. And even my dad was like, there's just a certain type of people who go into specific fields, and there's certain personality types. And the people that go into those fields have somewhat of a God or a hero complex. And so you can just tell that that is something inside of Dr. Thorne that he cannot stand with Wolf, because it does look like Wolf has a God complex or a hero complex. But right now, you can still tell that Thorne hasn't really had a real conversation with Oliver, because if he did, he would know that it doesn't come from being a hero or doesn't come from being a savior. It comes from his own father being bipolar and leaving him out in the woods with a gun that he did not know how to use, and then being left to fend on his own and could have possibly died. That is where it comes from. He goes out of his way to exhaust all resources to help his patients because he wished he could have done it for his dad, not because he feels like he can save everybody. He wants to get pat on the back. He doesn't give a shit about accolades. But this gets back to everybody. And even Dr. Wolf has to have Ericka in the office and was like, girl, just because somebody died in front of you and you refuse to acknowledge it doesn't mean that you can go out saving everybody. I get that you look up to me, but I just told y'all asses, what will Wolf do? Do the opposite. And this wasn't it. And so we will be talking about this shit in the future. Now, it looked like he was writing her up, but he ended up throwing it away. Because Ericka is a good doctor. But in this, you really get to see her breaking down. He's like, you know, you can't save everybody. And she's like, well, what are we doing this for? And I brought this up in the last episode. Every single one of these interns need to ask themselves, why am I here? Do I actually want to be a doctor? And it would suck to think that you wasted all of these years in medical school and the grind and the sleep and the no friends and the no social life and all this other stuff just to be like, this is not my vocation. But you really need to start asking yourself if this is your vocation. And it's not in the absence of being a doctor who is also human and experiences feelings and emotions, but it's how you're going to manage those things. And with Ericka, you cannot sit here and keep telling patients that they need to do this and follow these steps and follow these treatment plans when you aren't even on a plan. You aren't following the very rules and the things that you want other people. You're going out of your way to save the stranger. You're not even saving your fucking self. So what are we even doing? So she leaves with a little attitude, but it's like, girl, get some fucking help. Because you are not the type of doctor that anybody wants right now. You are no good for anybody right now. And even with the whole Dana situation of it all and telling on Carol, sure, it was a huge fucking conflict of interest with Carol that last episode. But at least Dana is looking and being like, okay, I am wanting to take this serious. And Charlie, I don't like your ass, but you might have a few points. And so you really see a shift in Dana where she's moving towards really figuring out her identity. We even saw in the last episode with Jacob and Markus, they're figuring out their identity. But Ericka's identity was so rooted in being a perfectionist, in being the first person in her family to go to school, to being the perfect doctor, to wanting to help everybody. And now that her identity is shattered, she has no fucking clue who she is. And nobody wants to be treated by a doctor who doesn't even know who they are. It just is what it is. So she needs to go ahead and get all of her shit together. But speaking of getting shit together, Joshy goes and hooks Carol up on a date. And when I tell you she had that shit on, my sis came out. I don't know if people who watch me on this podcast has ever seen Two Can Play the Game, but y'all know when Connie entered the frame with that tight outfit and that ponytail, with the Yankee bust down, hanging down. Listen, Carol came out that office with that black and white checkered dress, with that ponytail that was flipped out at the ends like a good old 50s, 60s, 70s vibe. Okay. Body was bodying. My sis is thick. My sis looks good. And Anthony sees her in the hallway. He's like, hold on. Who could you possibly be going out with? Because I'm still on work and you shouldn't be going out with anybody but me. Like, what's up? And she's like, boy, stop playing. I'm gonna go out on this date. Okay, Josh hooked me up with somebody. He is 6'6" and he is fine. Okay, and Stella needs to get her groove back. And I haven't dated nobody in 20 plus years, but you know, I'm gonna try. And Anthony's like, hold on, babes. You got a little something right here. And he slid his hand up her back because her zipper wasn't all the way done. And he slid it up real slow. And I'm like, okay. And she looking at him like, yes, permission to touch. But you know, he's smooth, he's slick with it. He was like, have a good time. So she goes out and Wolf is out doing some shit he ain't supposed to be doing, but this ain't even about that. She calls him in the middle of the date because she said she had to go to the bathroom, but she snuck out to the roof so she could wait enough time to not go back to her date because she said he boring as fuck. And yo, there's nothing more worse than you seeing somebody and they look good, they're smart, they got a good job, they got all of that stuff, and then you're sitting with them and you're trying to have a conversation that has nothing to do with patient charts and shit, and you're like, wow, you are fucking boring. What did Louis say? The softest, beigest pillow. And my sis in her 40s has snuck out of the date and lied and said she was going to the bathroom. Yo, relatable as fuck. And so she gets back and everything. And I don't know, I can't remember if it was the next day or like that night when she has back to the hospital or whatever. And Anthony's like, oh, you know what happened to your date? Did anybody get to get their hands on the zippers? Because it better just be me. And she was like, ain't nobody get their hand on my zipper, just you. Like, it was what it was. And he was like, listen, we're both divorcees. If you ever want to chat, you know, I'm here. And I have been looking at the way this man been looking at her this whole time. And so I'm here for it. Like I said, give us a toxic hookup. She's a psychologist. She's a psychiatrist. Sorry. He is an emergency room doctor. Again, both of them got epic problems. And we just need them to take it out on each other in the bedroom. That's all I'm rooting for. So at least give us that. You took away Jolliver. Give us Canthony. Oh yeah, I think we could do a little Canthony thing there. So give us that. But the last thing I wanted to talk about on this recap, I called it. I said, what reason could Oliver possibly be in Hudson Oaks to the point where he's signing some documents in which Carol is sitting right next to him? He has to be in there undercover trying to figure out what the hell is going on with Amelia Fredericks. And sure enough, with the opening and the closing of this episode, you see Oliver basically starting a fight with another patient that was clearly orchestrated. And he gets on the phone. We find at the end of this episode that the other end of the phone was Josh. And he's like, hey, they took my phone. They're not letting me talk to nobody. They're not even letting me fucking out of here. You need to figure out a way to get me out. And Josh is like, wait, what? What you mean? Like, you would just leave and do what you do. So from Josh's reaction, you can tell that this is supposed to be some type of routine visit or something. And Oliver's like, if you've ever loved me, listen to the tone of my voice. I am trapped. I don't know what the hell they got going on. There's some independent shit going on, but it's not sanctioned. You need to get me out of here. And so he ends up getting caught and they take him. And so Josh is like, dang, that's strange. And then you see Charlie Porter in the office and he's like, oh, is everything good with Dr. Wolf? And he's like, oh man, like it's something strange. He's like, oh, well, I wouldn't think anything of it. Seems like he might be in the best place possible. And Josh is kind of looking at Charlie like, the fuck? But also Josh is kind of processing like the information. Like you could tell like something is off. And what was pissing me off a little bit is I'm like, Josh, did you not hear the urgency in Wolf's voice? Didn't you say you was falling for him? And what I don't understand is like when you love people, this why I see what women be talking about when they be like, If you love me, you should just know. You should feel it. Because, Josh, do you not hear this man being like, I'm trapped. They took my phone. They're not letting me get it back. You will hear this chaos in the background. I'm on the phone telling you, and you're just like, Oliver, what are you talking about? What? That's crazy. They're not going to let you leave. Just walk in the front door. Nigga. Listen to the sound of my voice. The fuck? What are you doing? Jesus Christ. Yeah, he was pissing me off. He was pissing me off. But I hope Josh is not as dumb as that conversation sounded. And I hope in episode 5, we really start getting some eyes on the hiring process of Charlie coming into Ron's room, because I don't trust him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. So there's that. Season 2, episode 4, Lady Liberty of Brilliant Minds. What do y'all think, guys? What do y'all think? I do think that we might find Ericka overdosed on some of the pills that she's medicating herself with. And she might find herself a patient as well. I also see Dana betraying Ericka in some way, or at least aligning herself to Charlie to the point where she becomes blind to his ways, because already he has his fangs in her, and there's just a slow poison seeping there. It's just happening. But now that we kind of know that Oliver is in Hudson Oaks on some type of mission, really gonna need some flashback episodes now. Season 1 was heavy on flashbacks. Season 2, we're really getting into the patients. We're really diving into the ensemble in this as well. Now I'm gonna need at least half an episode dedicated to what led Wolf there before we can continue on. And I know we have a full season, so it's gonna probably be looking around season 18, episode 18-ish. But the cat's out of the bag. Something else is going on, and we need to see it. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Y'all tell me what y'all's thoughts are with that. But yeah, with that, we're gonna wrap up the recap and the review on season 2, episode 4 of Brilliant Minds. It was good as usual. Fun fact, I was just at New York Comic Con and I got to see Zachary Quinto in person with my own eyes. Listen, if I was a gay man in Hollywood, he's so handsome, and really smart. He moderated a panel for Lost Boys, and he was on it with Patrick Wilson and then the cast of the vampire horror musical that's coming to Broadway of The Lost Boys. And honestly, I can see why people approached him to play Dr. Oliver Wolf, because the way that he was asking questions as a moderator, it was just so intelligent that it's just like he can easily slide into the role of Oliver in the way that he speaks, in the way that he cares, in the way that he dives into things and really wants to understand like the underlying meaning of things. And so to know that he likes to go into the layers of things in real life, and watching his performance as Oliver Wolf in Brilliant Minds, it's like there was nobody else for the role. So shout out to you, Zachary. You're doing an incredible job. And yeah, I just want to see more of Tamberla Perry as Dr. Carol Pierce, just in her bag. I want to see her date more. I want to see her put that shit on. I want to see her go out. Okay. Like, I need it. I need it bad. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. As always, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments in the comments box below. If you got people that only want to listen, again, share the Spotify and the Apple Podcast link. You can also find me on Instagram at So There's That, where I talk about film and TV news and updates. It's also linked to my Substack, where I post articles about things that I don't necessarily talk about on the podcast. Some, yes, most not. So for people who like to read information and not necessarily want to listen to a podcast or watch me on YouTube, you can share the Substack link as well. It's under the same name, so there's that podcast. You can also find me on TikTok at Kivanchi, where I do short form reviews and recaps on things that I do not talk about on the show at all. And as always, you can find me on the Twitter streets at Kivanchi, where I'm talking about everything under the sun. You'll probably get more from me off of Twitter than you get anywhere else. And with that, I'm signing off, and I will catch y'all in the next podcast episode.